Whenever I bring these companies onto campus, my biggest worry is there are more companies than students. Nobody went through university who is successful did it by themselves. There are students who feel like university is something that I have to prove myself. Absolutely, you have to prove yourself, but nobody proves themselves alone.
For a student, it's very difficult for them to really go into each country, government's data and figure out which university is good for me.
That's a very good point. So it really depends on what the student actually wants to achieve in the long run. If you are struggling with the lectures, talk to the lecturer. The second thing is that, as I always say, a happy student is a successful student. If you have 5 subjects, it is true that you have to study hard, you do well. But there's also an invisible subject called employability. People are so focused on ranking without understanding how to use it effectively. Because we should not sacrifice success for prestige. Different universities from different parts of the world. It also shows a little bit of comparison based on a number of criteria. So actually, rankings are only important if you understand what the rankings actually mean and what the criteria is.
Hello everyone, welcome to our show, Spin the Career Wheel with Nikkhiel Malhottra. Today we have with us Professor Shanton Chang from the University of Melbourne. We are going to discuss about the importance of rankings in selecting a university. At the same time, we are also going to discuss about the logic behind these rankings. And so stay tuned with us, join us in this discussion. Hi, Professor Shanton. Thank you so much for taking time out for today's discussion.
It's a pleasure and I look forward to our discussion.
So you have been in India. So is this your first time to India?
No, it's actually my second time. Previously, I love, one of my favorite places to visit here in Delhi is actually Qutub Minar.
Okay, yeah.
I just love the history behind it. Even though I'm not in history, I love history. Yes.
That's great. That's great. So coming back to our main topic, what do you think? How important are rankings in selecting a university? And this is a very important question for all those parents whose kids are in class 9, 10th and they start doing the research. So do rankings really matter?
Well, yes and no, right? One of the key things is that rankings is one of the factors for selecting a university. And we can talk about all the other factors. But when we look at rankings, it is a factor in that it shows a little bit about some comparison across different universities from different parts of the world. It also shows a little bit of comparison based on a number of criteria. So actually, rankings are only important if you understand what the rankings actually mean and what the criteria is.
I totally understand. And that is where I realize that all these parents and students, this is always their first time and the only time when they want to do it. And that's why we decided to have this discussion. Yeah.
Fantastic. Because the biggest mistake would be to use a ranking without actually understanding what it means. And then when you go around to career fairs or study fairs, you can see almost every university has a top 1, top 10. How many top 1 and top 10 can there be?
And that's the biggest question. I'm with you. And I'm saying, so that comes to my second question is, which ranking, Professor Shanton? Which ranking? Yeah.
So, universities will tell you what are the rankings to use. But generally, there are the big 3 rankings. That is the Shanghai Jiao Tong University rankings based out from China that ranks universities based on their research portfolio, but also the number of Nobel Prize winners that they have. And so it's entirely focused on the history of the research, the caliber of the researchers, the publications, right? So that's the Shanghai Jiao Tong. Then you've got the other 2 that are quite big and used quite a bit, and they are the QS ranking and the Times Higher Education ranking. So those 2 are a little bit different. So one of them, QS, will then have to look at not just thinking about the research, but also looking at the education. So for example, they look at the number of professors to student ratio, for example. They look at the number of international students that may be there. So that tells us a little bit about the priorities of the university, how international it is, which means are they used to teaching students from across the world?
Correct.
Right? That's very important. But the QS ranking is also interesting in the sense that it actually measures employability. That means it also asks companies what they think right?
Yeah.
Whereas the Times Higher Education, other than research, they do look at education, but they don't necessarily focus on employability.
Oh,
Right?
okay. That's a very important data.
That's important. But
Yeah.
then the other thing is the research is still a big part for all these three main rankings, right? Then the second part that's really important is the education, the reputation of the teachers, if you like, and also looking at where the students come from, right? And then finally, the small percentage for the QS ranking is on employability, but also sustainability, which is a new part of the ranking that the QS does. So those are the three that people tend to compare.
Correct.
And,
Yes.
and what I suggest is if you look at a university, whether they are kind of consistent across all three, especially within their own region or within their own country. Then there's 20 to 30 other rankings.
Other than this, there are 20 to 30 other more.
Yeah. There are rankings that are based out of Australia. There are rankings that are based out of the US, out of Europe, everybody, because it's big money.
Yes.
This is other thing that's very important.
Yes.
When you're thinking about ranking, right, universities have to put their data in. Otherwise, how do you know?
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So they will send out all these forms and templates, and university have to populate it with data. They have to do surveys with companies, with other universities. So it's quite subjective in a way, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's one. We have all these private companies doing
Yes.
the rankings. I have also heard that at times the governments also do rankings. Government also rank institutes.
Yes.
So how do, for a student who really wants to study international, it's very difficult for them to really go into each country government's data and figure out which university is good for me.
Yes. The first thing we shouldn't do is to rely on ChatGPT.
Oh,
all right.
okay,
You
that's-
cannot ask ChatGPT what is ranking, because what it does is it aggregates all the ranking that's available, because that's all the available data online. So it will get an aggregate. So in the end, it will be quite a difficult thing to try and understand what is the aggregate, because all these things are measuring different things.
There's a lot of stats which goes into all this,
That's
right?
absolutely right. So actually, you need to treat each ranking for what it is, right? And it's quite easy to Google what do the rankings, that particular ranking, what does it mean,
Right.
So the information that I'm giving you now, you can actually Google it. You can say, what is the criteria for QS versus what is the criteria for Times Higher Education? And then you can decide which one is more relevant. Right?
I understand. But I think the purpose, what you're saying now, coming from me, I'll say I studied in India, and I remember when I was picking up the universities, for us, it was always about campus placements. And campus placements is all about getting a job after my education is over. So suddenly, when you are giving me all these examples, all these comparisons, I think QS ranking becomes an important ranking for us, because by default, as an Indian student, return on investment or chances of getting an employment, I really want to go to a university who really works on that data.
Well, that's a very good point. But let me take one step back, right? If you think about the Shanghai Jiao Tong University that looks at research, primarily, and look at the Nobel Prize winners, the history of the research and how much funding they have for research. If you're thinking of doing a PhD, that could be the most relevant. That's a very good point.
Yes,
so it really depends on what the student actually wants to achieve in the long run. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. Now let's talk about the employability piece within the QS ranking. So this one, absolutely right, that the campus placements, as you call it, which is when companies come onto campus to actually talk to our students, becomes really important. So at my university, for example, and particularly for even in my own faculty in engineering and IT at the University of Melbourne, what we do is that we actually bring in our alumni who are already successful working in the companies and now are coming back to tell our students how to get jobs in their companies.
That's the perfect thing.
Absolutely. So it's not just the HR trying to come here for talent acquisition. We'd like them to say, do you have any of our previous students coming to tell? Because they are the most relevant people, right?
Correct.
So that's the good news with the top ranked employability universities. But let me tell you what the biggest problem is.
Yes.
Whenever I bring these companies onto campus, my biggest worry is there are more companies than students.
Oh, okay.
And this applies here in India as well.
I think this applies everywhere.
Everywhere.
I hear all my friends who are working with top-notch companies.
Yes.
Nikhil, we have to hire agencies to get to these students.
Yes.
It's so difficult.
It
and
is
on the other side, students are always worrying about getting a job after my education is over. Yeah. Sorry.
Literally 2 weeks ago, two Sundays ago, my department, my school of computing and information systems, we brought these companies and alumni, had panels about employability, how to build your CVs, what are the things that companies are looking for. We had it on a Monday evening when there are no classes so that the students can come. But it also means that companies can come, right? Companies can come after their work to come and talk to our students, get CVs, get connections on LinkedIn, for example.
Right.
We had 450 students register to come. All right.
That's a big number.
It's a good number. But only about 300 showed up. Okay. But guess what? I have 2,000 students.
Yeah, that's now suddenly it becomes very
Suddenly
small.
The number is not that big, right?
Yes.
Where are the other 1,550? Right. So in the same way that I talk to students, if you come to a top ranked institute that provides these opportunities, but you don't come to these opportunities, you're actually not getting a top ranked experience. You are choosing to come to a top ranked institute and sit back and relax. That doesn't mean that you're going to get a job then.
Yes.
So in my university, if you look at these, they're all in the same classes. They are all given the same opportunities. But some students, we are a top-ranked university. Some students will get 2 or 3 job offers before they graduate.
Correct.
Others can't even get an interview. Right?
Because of their own initiative levels.
Absolutely right. So it doesn't mean that it's a magic thing that you come into a top rank, you'll walk out with a job. That's why parents have worked so hard, kids have worked so hard to get into the university, the top rank, and then they don't experience the top rank.
Correct.
And that's a problem.
Yes. So coming back to my next question is coming back on rankings, that one is the overall rankings. We have understood, okay, these are different types of ranking bodies. We know now which is important. But again, there is a confusion within these rankings. So as a parent or a student, I want my child to study accounting. Now, what should I check? Should I check the subject-specific ranking or shall I look at the overall ranking? What should I do?
This is a really good question because, like, for example, QS and Times Higher Education, they have subject rankings. And one of the key things that's really important is that whatever the subject rankings are, they also have to occur within the rankings of the whole university. The whole university is the environment within which you are studying. So campus placement, they're not necessarily just coming to recruit accounting students.
Correct.
There might be other types of companies that are looking for accounting students as well. The point I'm trying to make is that when you look at 21st century, it is often very multidisciplinary, right? For example, if you look at a company like Google, right, when they come onto campus, they are not just trying to recruit an IT graduate. They are also looking for the best arts and sociology and communication graduates. They are also looking for the best accounting that can keep their books and make sure that they can make some money. Right? But at the same time, of course, they're going to be looking for IT people. So if you are thinking of working for Google, do you just look at the IT or the accounting or the arts? No, you have to look at the whole campus experience. Right? Because when you look at the subject rankings, again, this is coming back to the research. Remember, a large proportion of the criteria is still on the research.
Oh,
right?
Got
That's
your point.
Very big.
It's
still very big on the research. So great. It's telling us that, this university is generally ranked very high, but their accounting is a bit lower, which just means that their professors' research is not at the level that some other university might have. But that may not affect the fact that your students are still getting the campus placements because it's in the same placements.
This makes a lot of sense here because, as I said, Indian students, for us, while we are studying, employability plays a very important role. And suddenly, focusing a lot on subject means we are focusing a lot on research.
Which
might
that
not
can
be
happen. But here's the other thing about these rankings. If you spend a bit of time even on the QS or the Times Higher Education side, and you just compare, say, between 20 and 30, all right? You just compare the universities between 20 and 30. The difference between some of these rankings is literally 0.5 here, 0.6 there, 0.8 here, or 2 points here.
Okay.
In the grand scheme of things,
Yes.
does it matter?
No, it doesn't.
This is the thing.
Yes.
If you're looking at a university within the top 200,
Yes.
right? The standard deviation, if we can talk about the statistics, it's really, you have to think, does it actually matter? Right? If you are going to say Oxford or Harvard or Princeton or Cambridge, really, do you think that the student going to one is going to matter if they are not studying and not engaging with the company? It's not about that. It's about the experience that's actually more important. So it comes back to your original question, do rankings matter? Within that set of the top 50, then the top 100, the top 150, does it matter if somebody is 38 versus somebody is 13? Right? Of course, as universities, we would love to say we are number whatever.
Yeah.
Right? But the reality is there's 0.5 difference between 15 and 16, for example.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
What matters is where is your child going to be happy and succeed and engage in all those campus placement opportunities and be student leaders and have a great time studying.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this. And this takes me to another thought. So suddenly the other areas are important. Example, again, coming back to QS rankings, they rank cities as well, wherein they will say, okay, say example, Melbourne is in the world's top 10 best student cities.
Oh, yeah.
So that becomes important.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I always say a happy student is a successful student.
Correct.
Right? And so you really need to think about the factor of where is the city, how safe is it, how comfortable it is, right? And so students being able to adjust to life, right? But not just to life, because if a student is thinking, so let's say a student is thinking of coming to Melbourne, it's not just adjusting to life and the safety and the comfort, because it can be very tricky if you are so comfortable, you don't move out of your comfort zone, and you have a bunch of students who are all from the same class coming to my university and they never do anything different. That's also not good. What we want them to do is come to a safe city and then explore it within the safe context. This means that if it is a good student city like Melbourne, which is one of the top 5 student cities in the world, it means that there are a lot of other opportunities within the city. The Lord Mayor of Melbourne welcomes the international students.
Oh, that's very interesting.
That's really good, right? That
yes.
means that they're actually placing interest in that, because that signals to the companies,
Correct.
go and talk to the international students. That signals to the community, go and talk to the international students. So that's the one side of why it's such a good city. But then it comes back to, are the students coming to the events?
Yes.
If the mayor is hosting a welcome and you never showed up, it's as if the mayor never hosted anything.
I agree.
If the companies are open to recruiting and you are not there, then all you can do is complain that the companies are not recruiting.
Correct.
Because it becomes very easy in all the major cities and countries in the world for international students to say, oh, these companies only want people who are citizens. All right?
Yes.
That's
you hear
that,
thing.
right?
We hear this a
I
lot.
work with these companies and all that. I can tell you one thing. Usually the students who complain about that are the ones who have actually not done the research. Because for every one that is not recruiting international students, there's one that recruits international students. But you have to go and find out which is which.
Correct.
If you just sit there and expect to just Google or a jobs platform, you're not going to find them.
Correct.
And so what we say is, if you're thinking of the best student cities, it means these are cities that are open for international students. It means there are opportunities. It means you have to go and look for it.
Look for those opportunities.
Yeah.
Correct. Another question which I have seen a lot of parents coming back to me and asking, Nikhil, is it good to go to a smaller city? Example, I'll say a better rank university in a smaller city or a slightly less rank university in a bigger city.
Yeah.
And a lot of student parents get stuck here.
That's a very good question. So my answer to that, is it depends on your child. Okay. Is your child used to living in a big city or a small city? Is your child looking for an adventure, something that's different? Is your child willing to adapt? Because at the end of the day, a happy student is a successful student. So you can come from a big city and go into a small top ranked Ivy League small campus off in somewhere in the US, for example, where the main employer is the university and no other industries. Okay, but it is ranked very well. What's your child going to be doing? What, if they then decide, oh, I miss the big cities, and they spend the whole weekend, moving, driving 3 hours somewhere and then driving back, is that a good thing? So it really is about getting the feel of what it is. At that point in time, you really need to think about not just ranking, but where the child is going to adapt and be happy and successful.
Correct. I agree. I think it's more about the personal choices.
Yes.
A student really wants to be in a university and a university campus life.
Yes.
It
Yes.
doesn't make sense.
I totally understand this, the parents worried about this, and of course the students as well, because the allure of prestige, right? Ranking. People are so focused on ranking without understanding how to use it effectively. Because we should not sacrifice success for prestige, right? Because I do see so many students who are coming to a top ranked university like mine and just waste the opportunity because they are, not thinking about what it means to be there. So we are constantly providing opportunities. Big cities, small cities, there are cities bigger than Melbourne, there are cities smaller than Melbourne. But what matters is how the student actually is interested in challenging themselves.
Correct. So that brings me to another question from what we are discussing. So in India, I see a lot of students are casual till their class 11th or class 10th. And suddenly, because they know this is the year wherein they need to plan for their university admissions, they start working on their year 12th marks and they get good marks. So their class 9th might be a very average, but suddenly their class 12th can be a 90% and above.
Yes.
And if such a student comes and makes it to a leading university,
Oh, yes.
Do you think it's difficult for them to sustain in the university?
Let me answer this question by talking about traveling and going on tour, right? There are a lot of people who work very hard. They pay a lot of money to get a passport and a visa. And then they go to the new country and they have done no research, right? They've not done the work. They don't know where to go, or they are a bit scared and they spend the whole time inside the hotel in the resort. What have they learned about this country that they've gone to? Nothing. Other than it's a nice hotel. Right?
Yes.
Great food, safe, comfortable, nothing. So this is the thing, you can work hard to get into a top university and then do nothing with it. Yeah. This is one of the issues. And sometimes when you are working so hard in the final year, and then you go straight to a top university, it doesn't mean that you have to stop working. Getting in is one thing. Staying in is another thing. And then getting out is another thing. So there's a 3-part process here. Getting in, staying in, going out, because we don't want to stay in forever. Right?
Nobody wants
to do that. But staying in is also a very important thing where the student needs to have resilience. If the student was able to study for 1 year and had not been trained to be looking at this, then they really need to be able to sustain it and be resilient, right? And so this is where sometimes students fall because they think, oh, I've already made it. This is it. I tell my students that this is just the start of the journey. It's not the end of the journey. Sometimes the students who study very hard in year 12, the final year, think that getting in is it. Okay. Now the university will do all the work because they are number one. As long as I just keep going, whatever, do my minimum, I will get a job. No. As we've discussed earlier, there's all these opportunities. Where are they? Yeah.
Got it. So another one of my points, which I always think in my mind, that while we are doing so much of research, do you think it's safe as long as I'm going to any country's top 3 universities? Because, you say,
Yeah, I think this is a good question because diversity is very important. One of the limitations of rankings that we have to talk about today is that universities are sent a template, right? And employers and other universities are sent a template to ask them to, what's the reputation of this university or that university. So what this means is that the system actually privileges established universities with a lot more resources. Because if you're 3 to 500 years old, you have a lot of resources.
Yes.
You speak English as a first language.
Correct.
You are able to get all the data that you've been collecting for years,
Yes.
right? You have systems to collect that data. If you have good data, you can provide the evidence to improve your ranking. Am I right?
Very right.
Whereas if you come from a less privileged background or country where you might not have the data in English even, or that you are not well established, you don't have a whole team of 50 people who is helping collect data, because there's, then you don't have the data to be rising up, right? So this means that we are then suddenly comparing countries without them being equal, and they're not. We all we know that they are differently resourced and different experience, different languages, all of that. My university, when we look at this, we of course are very interested in working with the top universities within each region, within each country, because we know that you are not just looking at the whole world is equal,
Correct.
everything being equal, because the rankings are not like that.
Yeah.
So the big limitation is that those countries that don't have in the top 100 doesn't mean that their students are not good.
Got it.
What we're interested in is the best students from each country.
Yeah.
So if you think that, oh, I want to go to a particular country, it doesn't seem to be in the top 100, but it's in the top 200. It is the top within that country.
Yes.
I'm really interested in studying about that country's culture, language, people, right?
Yes,
Then
yes.
go for that. And that
yes.
is the important part. So yeah.
Yes, very valid point. I think lot of parents out there will have at least some data
Yes.
on finalizing the universities. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And a testament to whether or not those top universities in the smaller regions or countries are recognized is even us as a top university, we would recognize those degrees and say, fantastic, you're the top student from a good university in a less well-known country. You are not ranked, but you are the top there. Come.
Correct. And whenever students goes to a top university of any country, by default, you're studying with the toppers of that country.
Absolutely.
So
And yes,
I look at
absolutely.
IIT Bombay
Yeah.
or IIT Mumbai in our
Yes.
country, then I know it attracts the best students of my country.
Absolutely.
And anybody studying there will get the best of the exposure in terms of
Absolutely.
the peer learning.
They're big partners for us, right? Why? Even though they are not in the whatever.
Yeah.
That's because if you look at rankings,
Correct.
again, the top universities are universities that have discipline across all the different areas.
Correct.
If you look at the IITs, they don't have law, they don't have medicine, they don't have arts. Now, law, medicine, and arts traditionally have higher publications or whatever, right? Whereas IITs, they tend to go to conferences, which we love in the School of Computing and Information Systems.
Great.
But we are riding on the other faculties within the university that pushes us up. But if IIT doesn't have law or medicine or arts to help them, so they are limited in their
Limited to
ability.
actually,
Absolutely.
yes,
So it's very different.
Pick up their rankings. But yes, when we look at engineering, they are in the top 50.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Got very valid point. So finally,
Yes.
to conclude our discussion, I will want you to give your advice on how students, once they get in, can come out successfully. Yeah.
That's a very good question. And the first advice that I want to give students is that nobody goes through university alone, right? There are students who feel like university is something that I have to prove myself. Absolutely, you have to prove yourself. But nobody proves themselves alone. There's a whole team behind you.
Okay.
Your parents, your friends. You cannot be isolated. You need to continue to be happy. Your new friends at the university, right? And the top universities all provide excellent support services. Don't wait till you fail the exam to ask for help. If you are struggling with the lectures from week 2 or week 3, talk to the lecturer, right? I always say to my own students, look, I would rather you ask now than after the results come out.
Correct.
Correct. And a lot of students think I have to push through these, prove myself. Nobody went through university who is successful did it by themselves, right? There's a whole team. And that's the first thing. Right?
And what I understand, and I think a lot of parents will love it by hearing this, that even if your child is studying in any international university, you still are with them. You still need to support
Absolutely.
them to make sure that they end up doing well in the university life.
But also to encourage them to seek help within the university, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is that, as I always say, a happy student is a successful student. I've said this maybe 5 times in this podcast, right? Yes. How do you do that? One of the key things that's really important is that if you have 5 subjects, right? It is true that you have to study hard, you do well, but there's also an invisible subject called employability.
Yes.
What are you doing for your employability? Are you part of a student club? Are you a vice president, a president? Are you looking at how you can improve your resume?
Correct.
For example, in my university, we help students with their LinkedIn profile.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So but you need to devote time to doing that. The same amount of time you would devote to a subject, you have to think about your employability, your resume. What's missing? I be a volunteer? Can I help? So that my resume starts to build up even while I'm a student. That's really important. We even hire professional photographers to help students take a photograph for their LinkedIn profile. Okay. But it's up to students to come and use the free service. It's there, it's included, right? Okay. But some of them don't. A lot of them don't, right? So you actually do need to have that.
And I think that's again come back. I'm coming back to parents always. I'm saying parents need to know that all this is available, and they'll make sure that their kids are there.
Particularly with the top ranked ones, you are paying to get this.
Yes,
not just to study. It's very odd for a professor to say, don't just study. But it's the truth, because I work with industry partners all the time, and I know what makes the difference for my students. That's why we are so high in our employability. We know how to play the game. Whether the student joins us in playing the game is a different matter altogether, right? And of course, part of that is also having time off to have volunteer stuff. You know, in my one of the best stories I can tell is one of my former students, when he was studying with us, he actually was looking for social clubs to join and he didn't find any. So he started his own. It's still going. He started his own club. It's the Tea Appreciation Society of University of Melbourne. And they bring all the top tea sommeliers into Melbourne. And so they learn to communicate with people. And so they put that on their CV. You know, I have other students who volunteer with the city of Melbourne to show people the direction if they get lost. What's that doing? It's not just volunteer. They're actually learning about Australian culture. Correct. Especially if they want to stay there, they need to know Australian culture.
And they need to interact with people of different nationalities. That's the best way.
So those are the 2 key things. Don't do it by yourself, and make sure you have a work-life balance and be happy and focus on your employability. Always ask for help early, not later. That's really important.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm sure everybody would have loved this show. And thank you so much for coming here.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Shanton.